It's the Sod Pod. Brought to you by Grassland Agro. The Sod Pod. Hello, and welcome to episode 10 of the Sod Pod. On this episode, Lauren and Claire headed off to County Tipperary to meet MC Milking It. They had a great chat with Mark down on farm in Tipperary. They also brought our agronomist from the region, Edward Healy. I'm going to pass over now and let's hear how their chat went. It's really interesting.
Hello everyone, I am joined here with Claire Aspel, our very own agronomist Edward Healy, and we're out on farm here with Mark Collins in County Kilkenny. Am I right in saying that's your address?
We're technically County Tipperary.
Oh.
The address is Kilkenny, but we're on the tip side of the border.
Okay, but which one do we associate
We're
with?
Tipperary.
Oh.
The post office in Kilkenny though, so
Very good. Okay, well we're out here on Mark Collins's farm here in Tipperary. Some of you might know him better as MC Milking It from his socials on Instagram and YouTube. So thanks very much, Mark, for having us. It's a smashing day outside today, lads. How are you keeping?
Good, thanks, Lauren, and yourself.
Not a bother on me.
Yeah.
You can't really complain with this weather, in fairness.
Exactly, yeah. I suppose, Mark, we start off maybe talking about your YouTube channel. It's massive. How do you find it, or how does it? Is it a lot of work for yourself? For
Yeah, I like fair play to. I know you had the Once a Day Farmer on there recently. He's doing a good job there too. It's a lot of work for something, but it's very rewarding. It's quite enjoyable to do. I do like doing it when you can get the time to put the videos together, and people seem to really like it, which is very encouraging.
yeah, I suppose it's very nice to see how somebody else's farm is getting on and just talking through different things and what you're trying and not trying. And I suppose it is very, very, very rewarding. And
Yeah, I suppose a lot of farmers love to see what other farmers are doing. No matter where they are in the world, you might be doing something very different. I'd be watching people from all over the world with very different systems, but it's very interesting. And even people who aren't farming seem to have a huge interest in as well, just to see, again, something different, something strange that you're not used to.
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Absolutely. I suppose, Mark, I would know you, because we went to UCD together.
That's right.
We're graduates from Ag Science, which feels like many moons ago now at this stage. But do you want to give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you're farming here, and a little bit of insight?
Yeah, so as you're saying, I was in UCD. I studied dairy business, graduated in 2020. And since then I have been home here full time in partnership with my parents. We are milking about 450 crossbred cows in a spring calving grass-based system. So yeah, typically we start calving around the 1st of February, compact calving about 90% in 6 weeks, and then a bit of a break before breeding starts on the 1st of May. And then we breed for 10 and a half weeks, all AI, which we do ourselves. And then after that, the focus is on grass to milk.
Very good.
Making as much money as we can from grass.
Optimum.
and YouTube even.
Yeah. And I suppose, Ed, how do you know Mark?
So I'm going to get a lot of abuse now for saying this, but I would have met Mark first through Pony Club. Believe it or believe it not. Now, and John O'Loughlin is going to love that one, so he is. But
you still ride the ponies, Ed?
No, there's no ponies being ridden now at the moment. So there's not. Suppose Mark would be best friends with my brother. I would have competed a bit with Mark's sisters, probably more so than Mark years ago in Warrington Pony Club there in Kilkenny. And yeah, look, I'd see Mark on the regular now.
Good stuff.
Probably when he's heading out with my brother now, really a lot of the time, you know.
Bump into each other in left bank there.
Yeah.
Very good. So Mark, I suppose we'll just touch, I know we touched already a little bit about your YouTube, but I suppose what kind of got you started into it? Like, and your Instagram is probably a big one. Like you're very keen on, like I follow you on Instagram and YouTube, but I suppose you're very good at promoting a sustainable agriculture.
Yeah, I suppose there was three main reasons. I always say three if I can ever remember them all. I suppose one thing was people seemed very interested in where their food was coming from, but there seemed to be a huge amount of misinformation out there. And I suppose I had the rare opportunity, unlike most people, to be able to put first-hand information out there of exactly what was going on a farm, that when people went to look for that kind of stuff, they could see it there for themselves. The other thing about it was when I was out in New Zealand, I was watching a lot of YouTube. If I was having a break on my lunch or whatever, YouTube was what I tend to be watching, and watching a lot of other farming YouTubers. And I kind of looked at something that I thought this would be something I'd be interested in doing. And then apart from that, I suppose any time I did put anything on social media, whether it was up in your story on Instagram or Snapchat, it seemed to get a great response. People seemed to love it, particularly people who weren't from farming backgrounds. Things you took for granted every day, they just seemed to love it.
I suppose that was very nice to see people taking such an interest. They're not even from agriculture, that you're like reaching out to such a wide kind of array of people. Just such interest in the farming world. Yeah,
it's quite encouraging, especially when like and your friends from Dublin in college who had never been on farm, when they start watching it, and they'd be talking to you every time you meet them on a night out or whatever, saying, "Oh, I love seeing the cows or the calves," or whatever. It's quite encouraging.
Yeah.
And Mark, do you see, like, I see huge positives in what you're doing. You know, you're opening farming out to a different community that mightn't necessarily have seen a huge amount of farming, you know, or they mightn't have seen calves or how animals or milk is actually produced in this country. Do you see, like, you are putting yourself out there, I suppose, when you're making these videos and putting stuff up on Instagram and putting stuff up on YouTube? Do you know, is there a negative side to that as well?
That's probably one of the most common questions I get, and I get that question about 10 times more often than I get the negative.
Really?
Feedback. I find, now I'm quite a positive person, and when people comment and stuff, I always look at the brighter side of it.
Yeah.
So maybe people are being more negative than I think they are, but
that's not a bad thing. Yeah,
a
that's
great way to be.
Yeah.
But I suppose the big thing I look at it is, if there was kind of negative comments, it wouldn't really affect me too much. The big thing I would see is that even though I try show as much as I can and be as open as I can, people really don't get to see the full picture no matter how hard you try. And the other side of the thing is I have no idea who they are or what they're doing and what their point of view is or their experience. So, you know, in 5 years' time, they could disagree with what they say now and agree with me, or vice versa. I could disagree with what I'm doing now and agree with them. So I'd be kind of more always open-minded to, you know, people have different opinions, and that's a good thing because that drives us on to challenge ourselves.
Yeah, fair play. Yeah. Fair play. Like, look, it's everyone's entitled to their opinion. It's as simple as that. Like, look, in general, I think, you know, what you're doing and what other farming influencers are doing is very, very positive for the industry. Like, I think as a whole, you know, and there's a lot of people up in, I shouldn't say this now because my girlfriend will strangle me as well. But there's probably a lot of people in cities like, you know, in Dublin and those places who have never actually seen, you know, a cow. So like I think the positives of something like what you're bringing there is huge.
Yeah, sure. You go back a few years or a few generations, like everybody had some sort of relation who was farming or whatever, and everyone went and saw a farm at the summer. But there's a huge population in Ireland, even that's still predominantly an agricultural country, that aren't seeing, like, have no idea what's going on. And not just even people in the city. I even find there's people in the country who haven't a notion what's going on out, you know, 100 metres from them. And that's a big thing. I know a good few of my neighbours would actually watch it, and
they're keeping an eye on it.
When you meet them on the road then or whatever, they'd be chatting, they'd know more about what's going on, like, which is good to see.
Very good. Yeah. But I think just one thing to take from that, Mark, is like you are a very, very positive person, which is actually it's great. Like you're extremely positive. But like you have to be, there's a certain type of person that can go and put themselves out there on YouTube. Like, you know, it takes a lot. Like I know for myself now, I wouldn't, even though I come on to podcasts and I do all this, I probably wouldn't be able to do it now. In saying that, I won't rule it out, but I could. But I suppose you're a very creative person. In general, well, I would class you as a very creative person. Like looking at your Instagrams and your YouTubes there, you're always dare I say, messing around, or you're always doing something or creating something. Like recently there I seen and only this morning actually, you were out with a grass harrow or a tine harrow, and you actually made that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I suppose credit to my father Padraig now. He's did the building work in that. Yeah, I suppose it was always something we kind of wanted to do. The tine harrow, probably talking about that for 15 years since I was a child, that we needed something like this. And there was an old kind of cultivator in a shed that was falling down, and we pulled it out, and kind of the frame of it was still strong, so painted up and put on a few tines, and it's just kind of a tool that can be used to help rejuvenate soil that might get a little bit damaged, rather than going in with a roller. I know some lads on the podcast aren't fans of roller, and I'd be in that boat too.
And none of them are here, so you're alright.
So, one of them might be here.
I'll represent the anti-roller parade. So yeah,
go on. While you're at it there, getting a few digs about Clare Ireland there. I'm actually, you know what, I'm delighted John O'Loughlin is not here now, because he's after having a couple of great weeks now between Clare beating Limerick and Munster winning at the weekend there now. His head must be massive at the minute.
No, you have to give him a few digs like that. Fair play to you, Mark.
But I suppose on the trying to with the content as well, showing that stuff, people are just they love seeing those things. And with I always think there needs to be a bit of room for experimentation on the farm, so you need to try out random things. And also with the content putting out there, I think most people prefer to be entertained than educated, really. So just making it a bit of fun, a bit of crack, and just showing the good stuff. And then if you just kind of putting in kind of a little bit of information on what's going on with it, that's where people are really taking it in.
Yeah, that's the motto here in the Sod Pod. I know. We are trying to educate.
Mark, like you would have been big into, say, the Macra, right? So you know, Callan Macra here have a massive club, like, you know. Do you think that has had any sort of influence now, and you know, in terms of talking to other farmers about what you're doing and sharing ideas? And I suppose I don't know. Yeah, I suppose. What's your question? I don't know what my question is. I really am just did something like Macra help you bring you out of your shell, or do you know, or I maybe never had a shell. I don't know. I don't know why I'm going down this line.
My mother said I had a shell until I started in Little Mermaid in 5th class as Chef Louis. She said that got me out of my shell.
That's definitely not been editing out. All right, that's definitely going in there. Do you hear that, James?
But yeah, I suppose it's going out. I suppose a big thing Macra would have done for me was get to know more people locally around. Like I would have went to boarding school in Rockwell and Cashel, and then, you know, away in college in UCD. Probably didn't, and even my primary school is only like 2 kilometres up the road out in the country. So with regards getting to know a lot of local people, that was where Macra really came in. A big thing. And getting you definitely, that's where you get a lot of inspiration for what things you're doing, and especially the content you're putting out is talking to people and seeing what they like. Even if I was at the ploughing or something, I remember there was you know, if there's young people come up and say, oh, I watched YouTube or whatever, I often try and ask them what is it about that they like, because then you kind of know what to throw out there. Sometimes you think people just love to watch machinery. They always do quite well, but you'd be surprised the amount of young people and kids that would say they love seeing the cows and things like that too.
Very good.
That's great.
And I suppose, Mark, just chatting to you before we came on there, we were just kind of chatting about everything, about how the year's been, grass growth, how the cows have been milking, and I suppose fertiliser. You were actually spreading a bit of fertiliser this morning. How did you find your spring, or how are things going for you at the moment on farm?
Yeah, sure. The year started out so well. February was absolutely phenomenal. Cows were out full time with us. Ground conditions were great. It really set us up well for the year. Animal health was great. The residuals were perfect. Obviously things turned south then once we hit March, and everything went completely sideways, and we really paid for it even up till about a week ago, or even the last few days. So quite challenged, but I suppose it probably helped that start that we were able to get most of the cows. We probably had 70% of the cows calved before things turned, but it did put a lot of pressure on the system. We probably grazed more grass than you would normally have grazed either, so grass was probably getting tight, but because we got a lot of stuff grazed well early,
it's coming back.
We kind of got into our second rotation earlier, but I suppose growth never took off then till recently too. So it's kind of been it's turned from a great start, it's turned into quite a difficult year. But things seem to be picking up now, and hopefully, we've paid for it all in full at this stage, and it will be a good year for the rest to continue. The worst thing that could happen now is it stays dry and we end up having a drought, because that would pinch a lot of farmers, I think, particularly with the silage stocks being so low.
It's difficult, the weather is the one factor we can't control, and we seems to be getting more and more extremes the whole time, so you couldn't rule it out, really, but just shows the importance of making good quality silage that you have there to buffer feed there in those times of stress.
That's a huge part to it. It is farming. We're at the mercy of the weather. You're never going to have the perfect year. I thought this would be the first spring that we'd stay out from once we started calving, but how wrong was I?
We got a false sense of hope there in February.
We did.
But as you're saying, at least everyone, you kind of got out and got grazing. I suppose that did help, and got cleaned off all the grass that was growing over the winter. Yeah, sure. You kind of, especially on our farm, is quite mixed. It allows us to get out early, but it can be quite wet in places too. And just having that, you got to go when you have the opportunity to graze as much as you can, because like that, sure, heavy rain in the end of February or in the middle of March, and you could be in then for a while. So you gotta. And you don't want to, when you have the opportunity to graze, the biggest thing that's going to grow grass in the spring is grazing it. Doesn't matter what you put on it. You can fire out all the nitrogen you want. It's not going to grow unless you graze it.
I know. But Mark, you, in fairness to you, we're actually sitting in Mark's gorgeous living room here now at the moment, and we're looking out at this massive last year's reseed of multi-species swords. So in fairness to you, you are implementing those measures that if a drought does come, hopefully it'll be able to kind of kick in. But I suppose just on the multi-species, how are you finding it? It's absolutely thriving out there now.
Yeah, it's doing quite well. That went in April last year, so it's just over a year now, and I think the big thing I would notice is there's less chicory in it this year, but there's still a good bit in it. There was loads of chicory in it last year. But I've been very, very happy with it. Last year it got a bit of 10, 20 at sowing, and it didn't see a tractor then after that. There was no fertiliser went out, and it got a little bit of parlour washings towards the end of the year. This year then it got a bit of slurry, and it got a bit of nitrogen in March, all right, but that was about it. I haven't been in the field with the tractor since.
Yeah.
How did you find the growth over the winter?
Now, in fairness, I didn't give it any chance because I grazed it on the 2nd of December. There was a good bit of grass towards the end, so I didn't want that to be sitting there over the winter.
Okay.
So ground conditions were quite good just at the beginning of December, so we decided to graze it, and we were still out, so we grazed that, and we really cleaned it off. So those last few paddocks that you graze at the very end of the year, they're not going to do a huge amount over the winter, but it did start to get going. Then towards the end, and we had to graze probably by the end of March. Anyway, again, and it's been growing well. One thing is funny is that field is our driest field on the farm.
Okay.
And it grew the most during the dry period last year.
Really,
which was really something. To show that was pretty cool to see.
I suppose that is nice, because one of the reasons you would probably might put in the multi-species is to get you through that drought period and get the multi-species working together as like a diverse kind of plant species in there to get you through the drought period.
Yeah, I suppose, like as I said, our farm is mixed, so most years we wouldn't really dry up, but obviously the last few years there has been some dry summers there, so it is a help. But just I think when you're adding in more species there, you're only going to help the soil and the microorganisms in it, so that they to help even just with the nitrogen, with nutrients, and get the growth growing. Like
by the sounds of it, Mark, like you seem fairly impressed with it. Have you any plans to maybe put it in a few more places this year, or what's your reseeding program for this year?
I currently have 20 acres sprayed off. That's all going into multi-species.
Great. Okay.
At the moment, like, my thinking is, I'm not worried about the persistency of some of the plants. At the end, it's going to end up as grass clover at the end, which is what I would have sown anyway. So I get the benefit of a few other plants for the first few years.
I actually see, like, I'd have a good few customers with multi-species. They're noticing very similar things to what you're seeing. Chicory is very, very good for the first year. Plantain is is lasting a little bit longer, but after it, the crop of grass and clover that's remaining is actually very, very good. Like, so I think it has a great future to play, really. And another thing, like, we were down in Moore Park last year looking at what they're actually putting in, and they seem to be putting in a lot of plantain with their red and white clover and grass mixes. And I think going forward, they're trying to do some studies to see will it actually help water quality, because plantain is supposed to grow quite well over the winter when your grass and your clover is not doing a huge amount, and there is still nitrogen being mineralized in the soil over the winter period that's not normally taken up by the grass or the clover, and they reckon that plantain will be able to utilize slightly more of that, so we will actually get added benefits to water quality, which I think is one of the biggest topics, in farming, especially in Ireland, like,
Am I right in saying, as add on to that the plantain causes cows to urinate more in smaller volumes?
That actually, you could be right. Over in New Zealand, probably.
That's where I had heard when I first came across plantain. That's what they were talking about a lot. That was decreasing the nitrogen in your urine patch. Yeah, exactly.
So exactly. I would have read from research over in New Zealand that the cow would urinate more often. So you're kind of spreading the nitrogen around instead of having patches of 600-700 kilograms of nitrogen going out in one. You're kind of spreading it around. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And also, I suppose, in the plantain, another benefit, I suppose, is the longer tap route, tapping into your water quality there, catching the nitrogen or any nutrients that's leaching down also, so you get a longer...
There's a lot of benefits there. There is a lot of benefits. Like, how one of the major, I suppose, negatives that I'd see going forward is managing weeds. How are you finding that, Mark, or what way are you trying to cope with that?
I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge with it, really, is because you're not using any sprays after, is controlling weeds in it. The field we sowed was a very clean field and there's very few weeds in it. We're quite, like, for the whole farm here, when we're bringing in cows, the main thing you're doing is going around and grubber and thistles and stuff like that when the cows are coming in. Let them go in their own time and just keeping track of weeds. And we try maybe a little bit of spot spraying as well. So that seems to be the big thing. If we can keep the weeds out of it, I think it'd be a great job. As far as I can see, that's the only main challenge with it. And then the one thing we're doing this year with the fields that we're sowing is, like, as I said, the field we went into was quite dry. The fields are going into now, half it's quite dry, half it's very wet. And I'm very interested to see how the plants perform and persist in the different parts of the field. Okay,
and I assume, Mark, you're, like, you know yourself, but I assume your soil fertility is very good in those fields that you're putting that multi-species into, because obviously it's quite sensitive to soil fertility and poor pH.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm looking at. We did soil sample last year as well, and looking at only sowing fields are 3 and 4 for being, and the pH being right. That's kind of what I'm trying to focus on as well.
Perfect. And I suppose then at the moment, you mentioned there that you're all AI. How is the breeding season going for you at the moment?
Yeah, breeding season's going very well. We started on the 1st of May there, so we're just over 2 weeks into it. And yeah, there's
going good.
well over 60%
Great.
AI'd. Could be up, yeah,
And
65%, 70 maybe. So it's going very well. We're doing twice a day for the first 3 weeks, which is new for us this year.
Yeah.
We used to always be once a day, but just we have started using a lot of sex semen in the last number of years, and it went well for us last year. We didn't really follow any of the normal protocols that they would recommend. We just kind of fired them in to see how it goes.
Is that a scientific term?
I think
Just leave it off. So yeah, it went quite well for us. Thankfully, the conception rates were around 55%, and our conventional was only a couple of percent higher. So
Okay.
it did seem to go quite well. This year we're doing the twice a day, see if we can improve on that.
Well, I was
Yeah.
actually listening, I don't know, I can't remember what it was now, but it was some other podcast on sex semen and stuff, and a lot of people, the comment that the speaker was talking about was that a lot of people kind of just chanced it, despite some of the negatives that were out there with the sex semen, and it actually turned out really, really well. So even though you probably didn't stick to much rules, a lot of people probably were the same.
Yeah, and we had tried it a little bit in the heifers, and we're getting on quite well. And we dabbled in it 1 year with the cows, and then it was the following year that Dad was like, trying to move dairy bull calves, is always a challenge. And I suppose the genetic gain of being able to reduce the number of cows you're breeding to dairy was a big thing too. So Dad was like, sure, come on, we'll just go all sex semen. And I was a bit nervous at the start, because obviously your whole system is built on
Yes.
cows going.
Yeah, of course.
It's changing
of
that
course.
mindset.
Yeah, but like the cows were in a good position, like again, calving a lot of them early. A lot of them are getting 2 or 3 cycles in before you're coming up to AI in them anyway. So
Perfect.
they probably are. Actually, most of them are probably meeting most of the protocols anyway
Okay,
themselves.
and I suppose then, and Ed, you might speak a little bit about this, is Pica. I suppose Pica is kind of a massive issue now. Was last year around this time of the year, hasn't really come onto farm yet. I personally see it starting to creep in now and probably becoming a massive issue going forward. I suppose, Ed, have you seen it much out and about on farm? And Mark, then I suppose, how have you got on with it? Have you had any issues with it this year?
Yeah, so I suppose I see it seems to be seasonal. Every year seems to be slightly different. Last year, I don't think we saw huge amounts of pica, and what I'm putting it down to really is, we had no winter really. We had warm temperatures. Grass kept growing at a constant rate. It was it was nicer on cows. The year previous, we had a ferocious amount, and have I seen it this year? I have seen it in places. I think it was a very challenging spring. Cows were on grass, then they were back on silage, then they were back on grass. Very tough. Like really what an animal wants to have is balance.
Yeah.
You want to see nice, consistent grass or silage going into the animal. Their stomachs are very sensitive to different dietary changes. And I have seen a couple of cases. I've got a couple of calls from customers with cows licking stones.
Yeah.
Standing outside the milking parlour, going for slidic and gravel, that sort of stuff.
Crazy.
So, look, we've had a challenging spring so far. We're getting warm temperatures now, longer days. Grass is starting to kick off, and that's always a risk period as well for pica. From what I can see, the faster the growth rates seems to be, the lower the quantities of phosphorus.
And I suppose then there's been some people are kind of tied now this year with the amount of phosphorus they can spread. So again, we're going to have a reduced amount of phosphorus in the soil, and therefore in the plant uptake. For the plant to uptake.
Yeah.
Mark, have you had any issues with it this year? I know last year you would have had a few issues, and you would have kind of reached out to using some of our phos blocks.
Yeah, over the last few years we probably would have seen it a little bit, and there was one year in particular, I think it was either 2020 or 2021, where even farms who had never really seen it were starting to see it a bit, and we really got hit very, very hard. We saw a big drop in their milk. Thankfully it didn't hit their conception rates too much, but when you let the cows out into the field, there's 400 cows there, maybe only less than 200 of them are grazing, the rest of them are lined up by the roadway eating it. It was quite strong. So
must be quite concerning, seeing something like that.
We were AIing the cows, and you were pulling gravel out, in your hand. You were thinking, gosh, it wasn't grass to milk then, it was stones to milk. And there wasn't much milk off them now.
That's a new one.
I wouldn't recommend it now, but so we were looking at different. So the typical go-to was, a bit of rock salt and bit of phosphorus in the water, but that year we felt that wasn't doing the trick, and we tried a bit of phosphorus in the feed one year, and that worked quite well, but it can be quite expensive. And then obviously we're trying not to feed that much meal. Ideally I'd like to cut it out. At the moment we've cut it out completely because growth is taken off.
Great.
So that's where the mineral blocks came in, and we started using the Calcifos, and I was actually really surprised that they worked quite well. Maybe it was a couple of other things coming together too last year, but the cows did well on them, so we have them in there now.
Very
and like
good.
that, we haven't actually seen that much of it this year, which is a bit of a relief compared to the last number of years. But like that, as Ed was saying, the slow growth rates was probably kind of helping it there. And with grass grow have taken off, we have the rock salt out now, and the Calcifos blocks in the parlour.
Yeah,
so
great. And
hopefully that'll keep them at bay.
Yeah, even that you haven't seen it yet, prevention is better than solution at the moment, so at least if they are deficient, they'll only lick them if they need them. And it's funny that you say that you were a little bit sceptical about them at the start. To be fair, if Edward Healy was coming into my yard, I'd be a little bit sceptical.
Yeah, a lot of lads think I'm a cowboy alright now, but I win him around eventually.
No, very good.
He didn't come in on the pony anyway, so
No.
Yeah. Oh, Janie, Ed, you're not going to live that one down.
Oh, listen.
So look, lads, thanks very much for coming on. A really, really interesting conversation to both of you, Ed and Mark. Mark, I just have one last question for you. Are you making your way down to the kingdom, down to Kerry this summer? For anyone who doesn't know, Mark was a 2022 Rose of Tralee escort, so any adventures on this year?
I will be down there, definitely. I won't be escorting now.
Okay.
I'll be off duty this year, but I'll definitely be down to meet up with the crew. A serious crack now at that.
Very good, fair play to you. Good stuff. Well, look, lads, thanks a million, and we'll chat to you soon.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks very much, guys.
What a great listen. That's Mark from MC Milking It from Tipperary. Mark has a YouTube channel, over 12,500 subscribers. Check it out. He also has an Instagram, massive following there, 7,500 followers as well. Looking at his day to day, and a great bit of humour splashed in as well. I suppose from Mark's point of view, he shows how milk is produced on the family farm, their grass-based dairy farm. He's also a big advocate on promoting social, economic and environmental sustainability in agriculture. Well done to Mark. Thanks for coming on the show. And again, check out his YouTube and his Insta, MC Milking It. Mind yourselves out there. Farm smart, farm safe. Hey, thanks for listening to the Sod Pod. We hope you enjoyed it. To find out more, head over to www.grasslandagro.ie or check out our social channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube. That's all for this episode. See you next time.